How to hire a contractor, tip number 7. Ask good questions. Now this is a must, and obviously it's kind of a tip within a tip, because each one of these tips will provide you with a good question most of the time. However, it's like tip number 6. Does your contractor smoke? If your contractor pulls up on the job and you see him smoking in his car, throws a cigarette out, whatever, your contractor smokes. You don't have to ask the question. Your contractor smells like tobacco. You're right. Don't need to ask a question. Your contractor has black gums from chewing tobacco. Yeah, we don't got to ask the question. He chews tobacco. But what is a good question? Realistically, there are going to be some questions that aren't going to be applicable to your project. However, they might be a tip that I'm providing you with. So, wouldn't be a bad idea to get out a piece of paper and a pencil and write down a few of the most important questions you have, and make sure that you actually ask them to the contractor. One time I was at a house and the person sat me down, and they were ready to, looked like they had about 20 or 30 questions there. They asked me 1 or 2 questions and gave me the job. Never even asked me the rest of the questions. Wasn't even if this is fine with you, great. If you're trying to select a contractor and you're not entirely convinced that they're the ones you want to hire, you're going to have to ask them a few more questions. And like I've said before, don't fall in love with any of these contractors. This is business. If some contractor comes over to your house and your wife or your husband, they think that the person's a hottie, and you can't really get them to rationalize the situation, you could get taken advantage of. So more on that one later, I guess, because I've seen that happen too. Good questions. Realistically, you don't need to know how much money your contractor makes a year. Does he own any rental properties? Come on, these aren't really the good questions, of course, unless they're applicable to your project. If you're doing a bathroom remodel, you don't need to ask any questions that would apply to new construction, a brand new home, building a brand new home. So, like I said, grab a piece of paper, write down a list of questions, make sure that they're good questions, and questions that are a valid concern of yours. And of course, you will need to make sure that they actually get answered. If a contractor avoids asking these questions, ask them again. And if they avoid them again, try to end this conversation and cut these people loose. Send them back into the ultimate ocean of contractor referrals. So ask the questions, and more importantly, get the answers you're looking for.